Well, iPhones are getting thin, with a brand new family of iPhones that includes the iPhone 17 Air. A startup called Alterego claims it can read your mind and enable silent communication, sort of. There's a new report that AI adoption is trending down. Well, I have thoughts on that. All that and more on New Tech Nightly. Recorded tape to live from the Big Pink in beautiful Portland, Oregon. This is New Technology Nightly, and I'm your temporary host, Shannon Leonard. All right, we got new iPhones, including a new super thin iPhone Air, but I'll get to that. Let me just run through all of the new models. We got the iPhone 17 base model starting at $799. What's new this year? Well, it has a Pro Motion display. That means it can go up to 120 Hertz. Just means super smooth motion when you're scrolling or playing video games. Of course, it has a faster chip with the A19, some camera updates, but most notably the front-facing camera gets a big upgrade because not only is it higher resolution, but the sensor is now square, so you don't have to flip your phone to take landscape selfies anymore, and the eye lines will line up better. That's their pitch, at least. But I'm probably not alone in being distracted by the iPhone 17 Air, brand new iPhone design. Wow, like when was the last time we had such a radically new iPhone design? I feel like it's been a long time. Like since the iPhone X, when they came out with the all-screen design, they got rid of the home button. This iPhone 17 Air looks very thin, what they call impossibly thin. There's some Apple marketing for you, because it's clearly possible, because they did it. But yeah, it's a new design, super light, super thin, but it still has pro features. It has the A17 Pro chip in it, which is faster than the base model chip. It only supports eSIM, and it only has one camera on the back of the phone. But Apple says you can get, multiple different lenses from that one back camera. Really, they're just saying you can kind of get different points of view, maybe zoomed in closer, a little bit wider, and that one back camera supports all those modes. Obviously, it's better when you have dedicated cameras for those things. But look, this phone is all about the thinness and the new design. You're gonna have some compromises for this new design. And one of those compromises is the battery life. Apple talked a lot about how, they made as much room as possible for the battery, putting all the major electronics kind of in that top plateau, the top bar on the top of the phone. They call it a plateau. More Apple marketing. With a phone that thin, the battery is going to take a hit. Although they do claim all-day battery life, they didn't give a specific number. They did say when you put on a MagSafe battery pack on the back, you can get up to, 40 hours of video playback. But again, that's with the battery backup. So I guess all-day battery life, because that could be a deal breaker for the iPhone 17 Air. If the battery just devoured within 5 hours, if you're doing, heavy tasks, that would not be great. And let's be honest, people are doing a lot of things on their phones these days. It's not like you're just lightly using your phone. I mean, phones have become the center of our lives, and the iPhone specifically dominating, especially here in America. So we'll be watching to see what that battery life is like in the first reviews as they come out. The Air starts at $1,000. But wait, there is more. There's the iPhone 17 Pro, and wow, this is looks a lot thicker compared to the iPhone 17 Air, but it has amazing battery life, the largest battery to date. So you won't have to worry about battery if, you just compromise for a bit thicker of a phone, although it does have a brand new design. Got these interesting colors with an orange and a blue. So Apple's still trying to do something with the design too, because this phone is more expensive than the iPhone 17 Air. The standout feature set for me, besides the battery on the Pro models, are the cameras. I mean, they clearly went all out on the cameras for these Pro models. A lot of cinematic potential, and every year the cameras get better, but it seems like we've reached a point these Pro model phones can compete with DSLRs. You can shoot ProRes RAW on these new phones, which if you're not in video or film production, you might not know what that means, but it means we have very high quality codecs, high quality formats being able to be captured with these Pro model cameras. They also added support for Genlock, which is a synchronization capability for Pro use cases. But again, for most people, you're not going to use Genlock. But these Pro phones, they're getting very Pro to the point where most people may not even need any of these Pro features. The 17 Pro starts at $1,099. The Apple Watch Series 11 looks very thin, but again, not a lot of design changes, a lot of iterative updates on the Apple Watches, and I'm going to wait for some more deep dive reviews to go into the Apple Watch more. But what was more interesting to me is that the AirPods Pro 3 came out and they look like a big upgrade, totally redesigned so that they fit better in people's ears. And the standout feature was a live translation feature where they had people talking in different languages, and the AirPods Pro 3 was translating in real time. And they said that was powered by Apple Intelligence. So finally, a use case for Apple Intelligence that makes sense, besides like Genmoji. No, I'm kidding. I know there's a few other use cases for Apple Intelligence, but obviously a lot of people like to make fun of Apple Intelligence, and for good reason. Although I will say on the privacy side, Apple did make some good innovations there, but still, obviously all the frontier AI labs are so far ahead. Apple Intelligence is a bit of a laughing stock, but this feature with the AirPod Pro 3 was very cool. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. Real-time translation. Moving on to our next story, a Boston startup, Alterego, based on their MIT research, publicly previewed a silent speech wearable yesterday where you can converse with other people without audible speech using neuromuscular signals. So importantly, they're not reading brainwaves, but the demo video that they launched was pretty compelling. We're wearing what looked like a fairly lightweight device. They had two people talking to each other without speaking. And on first glance, it really does look like telepathy. I mean, these people are using their mind to speak to each other, but it turns out it's more to do with small musculature changes. I don't think I'm saying that correctly. Let's just go with muscles in your mouth slightly changing, and that makes it non-invasive. I guess it's reading signals from cranial nerves. No funding or ship date has been disclosed yet, and the CEO is set to discuss this more at the Axios AI Plus Summit on September 17th. And if you sign up for their email list, they even said they had a part 2 video that they're going to be releasing soon, so I guess we'll wait a little bit longer and see what Alterego has to share, but it's very interesting technology and definitely worth mentioning. Okay, for our next story, is AI adoption trending down? You might have seen this in the headlines over the weekend, with outlets flagging declines among large US firms using AI in the last 2 weeks, using census data. But I wouldn't jump to conclusions too quickly here, because this was a very specific question. The question they asked businesses was, in the last 2 weeks, did this business use AI to produce goods or services? That's very strict. That really only captures active use right now. And also, are using it to produce goods or services? Like right now, AI is being integrated in so many ways. So that's a very narrow question. And there's other reputable trackers. There's a Stanford AI index that shows much higher organizational level usage because they're asking broader questions. So if you see headlines about AI adoption ticking down, well, that may just be more about the specific study or the questions that were asked in that study versus the actual truth on the ground. It's really hard to know exactly what's happening with AI adoption right now. Everything that the labs have shared is that usage is trending up, and it doesn't seem like that's slowing down. There's actually another NY Fed finding that said that adoption is rising in their region, but job impacts are modest so far. So, take that for what you will. That kind of reminds me of that study released by Meter a few weeks ago that said that AI slowed experts by 19%. That might have been a headline you saw. But really, that was just a randomized controlled trial with only 16 open source developers. And many of those developers had never used AI before, so they weren't trained on the tools. So with such a small sample size, it's really hard to get actual takeaways from that kind of data. I've seen firsthand that these tools are absolutely very good at coding, very good at software development, but there is a learning curve in how to use them and how to implement them. I personally believe that we're always going to benefit from having humans in the loop. Our next story, Anthropic agreed to a $1.5 billion settlement covering 500,000 books tied to pirated data sets that they used. Although the judge has not approved this yet, so this is preliminary, but that is a pretty big settlement. What's interesting to me is that this only applies to the pirated books that Anthropic allegedly pirated. Anthropic actually bought a whole bunch of books physically, and they scanned them in digitally. They ripped the covers off, kind of destroyed the books in the process, but scanned them in digitally. And apparently those were fair use. So again, it's another example of the headline might be a little misleading here, where Anthropic is potentially paying this very large settlement, but doesn't mean that training data isn't fair use as long as it's acquired with legal means, like actually buying physical copies of a book. In my opinion, it feels more destructive to destroy physical books than getting digital versions and then using that as a training data set. But I feel like it's also good that we're getting to see some compensation for authors. I think the compensation structures around training data is such a new field, and there has to be an ethical way to move forward here. And look, I don't claim to be an expert on the ethics of training data. Personally, whenever I use these tools, I like to preference licensed models that actually have all of their training data licensed. I feel like that is the most ethical way to go. But I wish I had a panel of people on this show right now to actually discuss this. This is the work in progress version of this show, but going forward, I'd love to have multiple perspectives and different people coming on to discuss these really challenging topics on how do we compensate people for their training data, etc. So more there coming soon, and I promise you won't just have to hear my opinion. Our next story is about an animated feature film called Critters that's backed by OpenAI. It's an AI-heavy animated feature that's going to be at Cannes in 2026 with a $30 million budget in a 9-month schedule, which might sound like a lot, but that is a very quick schedule compared to how long it usually takes for an animated film to be produced. That can take years for animated films to be produced. But they only spent 9 months. OpenAI is supplying the tools and the compute costs for the project. But interestingly, they're using human voice actors. So they're still keeping humans in the loop, which I think is great. Not having the whole thing be completely AI generated, because there's definitely AI generated realistic human voices they could have used, but they decided to go with real humans. And that kind of is an indication for maybe how these kind of AI tools might be used going forward in media, where we're kind of a hybrid approach. We're leveraging these tools when they can be something that actually helps the creatives and the creative vision, but still keeping that human touch in there with human actors doing the voice acting. So I thought that was interesting. And again, more different perspectives on that on this show very soon. The final story for today happened last week, but I have to mention this in my first episode. Atlassian has bought the browser company for $610 million. If you haven't heard of the browser company, they make a really cool browser called Arc, and then they gave up on it and kind of disappointed their users. But now they're building a new browser called Dia. It's an AI-enabled browser. And honestly, the users of Arc aren't very enthusiastic about Dia from what I've seen, but that didn't stop Atlassian from investing $610 million to buy the browser company. And they're going to turn Dia into an AI work browser. So yeah, so that'll be interesting to see how they compete with Google and other players. Obviously, Chrome is so dominant. It's like really hard to disrupt Chrome. But we've seen smaller companies, actually even Perplexity, if you heard they're an AI company, they're making their own browser called Comet that's AI enabled. Even OpenAI is rumored to be creating a browser. So we'll have to keep a look on how the browser company does with this new funding and this acquisition. But Atlassian is a very big company, so it makes sense that now the browser company will have more resources to build out their vision. All right, well, that's it for today's episode of New Technology Nightly. I'm Shannon Leonard, your temporary host, which, I might come back. I'll be your temporary host for this first season of episodes, and I will be involved in the show going forward. This is produced by Resonant Works, which is my company. I just started here in Portland, Oregon, focused on implementing ethically driven and sustainability conscious AI, but not always using AI, but that's part of what we do. Anyways, this show comes out of our media department, and I'm just kind of temporarily hosting this as we get going. But if you're interested in hosting this and you live in Portland, you can reach out at hello@resonant.works. All right, thanks so much, and I'll see you tomorrow.